You're listening to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Cruikshank. Our podcast brings you information and resources to enhance the therapeutic effects of your practice based on a deeper understanding of anatomy, physiology, and the integration of modern science and research with traditional practices and experiences. Join me and my co-hosts, Rachel Land and Katya Barch, as we dive into all things yoga, research, and wellness. So we're back and we're going to talk about social media. And honestly, I feel like this is one we're going to keep really casual. We have some topics to talk about, but who knows? Maybe it'll lead into probably some other discussions later on. And we're going to talk about social media. You know, I think most people have a love-hate relationship with social media, especially yoga teachers who use it in their work. And you know, I think there's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about it a little bit. And of course, you can post questions or DM us ideas or other topics, because I think there's a lot of different ways we can go with this. A lot.
And I do think with social media, I think people think there's some kind of secret that they're missing. Like it must be easy for other people, and for some reason it's not easy or it's not successful for me. There's some thing that other people have been told that I haven't been told, and I don't think that's true, or at least not these days. I do think if you started early, things probably were a little bit easier, but for people trying to carve out a presence in social media now, I don't think there's a secret that you're missing.
Well, and I don't even know if that's true. I know that for the people I know who started early, like I did, I think it did help get a presence early on. But I do see that a lot of the people who started early, like myself, have a harder time getting like bigger traction. They're just like the algorithm somehow has pinpointed them to be this certain growth rate, and you just can't break out of that mold.
Yeah.
And so you see people come up and get these like massive followings, which is, I think, more common on TikTok than things like Instagram. But you know, it does take a lot of work. And I mean, I think it like, what am I missing? You know, there's always new things. And, you know, I think there's a lot of things to keep in mind, you know, when we think about like, what do we want to be on Instagram? What do we want to do? How much time do we want to spend? What do we want to post about? What's important to us? And I think how many followers you have and how many comments or likes you get is not indicative to the level of connection that you have with people and how meaningful that community can be for you and your business.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's one level of it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't post on Instagram to share photos with my friends and family. I just don't. I text. You know, for me, Instagram, it's work, but in a good way. For me, it's like it's work, but it's really about community. It's about connecting with the people that I care about, that have similar likes, that have, you know, drawing people to me that have similar taste in yoga and the things that they appreciate and want to learn about, and having a meaningful sense of connection and communication within that.
No, I totally agree. And I think you can get tricked into thinking that the metrics are the things that are important, that it's the number of followers or the growth in followers or the number of comments or the number of likes. And really, at least these days, I feel like that's pretty much irrelevant, because most of us yoga teachers have small enough businesses that we don't need 500,000 followers or 1 million followers in order to connect with people who are going to do our classes or come to our workshops or just read our content and respond to our content. We just need a smaller number of people who are like-minded, interested, motivated. And that really, you don't see that when you look at the metrics.
Right. And I think there's something to this whole idea of like micro influencers, that people who have smaller followings are really able to connect and, you know, connect in a different, more meaningful way sometimes than people who have massive followings, because, you know, sometimes it's not as meaningful and as deep of connection. But I think regardless, I think there's pros and cons to both. So you don't need to feel like your aspiration is to have a huge following. People can have massive followings that don't equate to having good business too, and having that relationship in a business way. And obviously there's a whole other conversation of, monetizing social media, which isn't really interesting or important for me as much as what's really always driven me is having those meaningful conversations and just being clear about who I am as a teacher and what I feel like I have to offer, knowing that that isn't going to be everything for everyone, but that I do have something to offer and, some information to put out there, whether that's, as a way to support people who maybe wouldn't be able to learn from me, whether that's time or money or location or whatnot, making it more accessible for people who wouldn't otherwise be able to learn from me or from anyone, maybe, depending
Yeah,
where
you
they
can
are.
kind of think about it as like bite-sized chunks of curriculum. You're just offering little piece, little piece, little piece, little piece, and people can put that together over time and really pick up a huge amount of information. So maybe we start by talking about how you figure out what you're going to post, because you've said you don't share much about your friends and your family. It's work related things, and it's the same for me. So how do you come up with the ideas of the things that you're going to post?
Well, I do think it is a balance of all of that. Like, I do think there's something about the humanness to how we connect on social media that's important. For me, it's always been really important to have informative posts because I'm also aware that like our teachers have limited time as well. We have a lot of teachers who are very busy and teachers who are also having other jobs or are healthcare providers, and we're all busy. Let's just, you might have maybe have kids or you have another totally unrelated job. So being able to give bite-sized pieces of information has always been really important to me to keep people inspired and informed. But then this idea of community to me also revolves around a humanness of like, which for me is probably more in my stories than my posts, but like,
Same.
hey, I have the same struggles you have and we're in this together. And I'm not going to try and be the person who is preaching or telling you what to do, but like, here's a question and here's what I think is helpful. And as a healthcare provider, I just don't think there's like an answer for everything. It is an exploration, which is beautiful. So we can invite people into that more human exploration, as well as, having a resource of information. And so for me, it's kind of a balance of both of those, the humanness and community, as well as the information and resources.
Yeah.
That's kind of the balance of content.
Yeah, I take a really similar approach. To me, I'm a teacher. That's my job. So my posts should be informative. They should be offering information or starting a conversation or continuing a conversation or challenging an assumption. And yeah, I really enjoy hearing back from people as to whether that resonated with them or whether they thought something different or had a different take on it. And when it comes to sharing things about me personally, I just do that in my stories. And I'm, it's rarely going to be my face. It's rarely going to be my partner, who is very anti-social media, but me, my dog, the things I care about, like the mountains, and that's about as personal as it gets for me.
I love your hiking stories.
And I love
never
my
get bored
hiking
of
stories
those.
too.
I'm like, I want to live. I literally think about you all the time when I think about where my dream place would be to live. I'm like, Rachel, look at like it just feels like your backyard is the wilderness.
Yeah, there's a short drive involved.
That's my head.
Yeah, it is. There is a short drive involved, but for me, that's really important because it reminds me of why I do what I do, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of working early in the mornings, there's a lot of working late at night, but it reminds me that there's often a time in the middle of the day where I can get outside and see something beautiful, and it just keeps it all in perspective and keeps it all grounded. So yeah, and the intent in terms of the ideas of what I post, they come to me the way all ideas do, when I'm hiking or when I'm in the shower, or when my brain's kind of partially switched off, a little idea will pop in. I'll capture it in my phone, and I just have a list of questions or poses or ideas that I then flesh out when I come to a time where I'm like, I really should post something. What should I post?
Yeah, and I think for me, the content, and I feel like this is an overused word, but I'm going to use it. it's just what's authentic to you,
Yeah.
and to me, that's what's really important. And, as a teacher, whether I'm on social media or trainings, like I am really thinking about what's important to me. But in my experience, both as a human and a student, which is first and foremost, my experience teaching my students, for me, my experience in healthcare, working with patients, as an athlete in the times when I'm more active, or whatever that might be. And maybe if you're someone who works at a corporation and your stressful corporate life, or it's like, what is
What's coming up?
inspiring me today, or what am I feeling like? I'm finding a lot with my students or patients that comes up. And for me, social media really was originally like my books, a way to share those things I was seeing over and over and over again with my patients, as a way to help kind of safeguard, or like more preventative kind of medicine for my students who are practicing with me regularly, or people who are on social media could get these little tidbits of things like, why wait until we're hurting or suffering? And not that it's a fear-based, like, do this or you're going to hurt your rotator cuff, but like, do this to you. I know we're the same way.
100%. Yeah.
But
And I think
it's like what inspires us. And if it comes from that, it feels more genuine. If you try and feed the algorithm, there's usually someone else already doing that and doing it better because they've been trying to do it for a long time. But there's so many niches. There's so many areas for more niches. If you can be really true, really clear about who you are and what you do, like if you're working with a lot of fertility patients in yoga, or rowers, or tennis players, or like something specific, I think that's really cool and interesting. And it may not be everything that you talk about, but it really can be something that means something to you. And then when you're making a video, you're speaking from that. Like, I'm actually really speaking from a deep interest, not just like, I think this is going to be interesting to someone.
Yeah. No, it's got to come from you actually being interested in it. And for me, one thing that's helpful is to have sort of through lines, continued concepts. Like I do a bunch of pose variations. I do a bunch of breakdowns of muscles and what I think is interesting about those muscles. So it also means that if I do run out of ideas, if nothing's coming up for me right now, if there's nothing that I'm kind of puzzling through or working through, then I've got something to fall back on. And it's something that I'm always interested in. Like, one of the ways to deconstruct people's assumptions about alignment is just to do what you always do so beautifully in your classes, is how about today we X, drop our head to the side or move the front foot further forward, so that you kind of soften people's rigidity around practice and get them a little more playful and curious and exploratory. So yeah, I have some fallback things, and then I have things that are coming up, things that I'm working on, things that I'm hearing about or thinking about. And I think it's really important that both of those things overlap, as you said, with stuff that you're actually interested in and passionate about and believe is important.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I think you're the same in this one too, but like I know a lot of both myself and our teachers struggle with, making videos and having it feel really authentic and genuine. And I think for me, I'm always thinking about those people that I've been working with, that these, whatever has been helping. I'm thinking about the people that will benefit from it. 'Cause I'm not an actor. And if you ask me to act and try and do something like, and there are some people who have theater backgrounds, and that's great. Like, it can lend itself to posts and things like that, but you don't need to have that. But if you don't have that, which is probably great, because then what ends up happening is we start really talking about things that we really care about, and it kind of comes from our heart, which isn't really so much about your post and your community, but about creating a sustainable community. Because as a teacher, in your teachings and your social media posts, if I'm speaking from a place of really genuine interest and experience, it's more natural, it's more sustainable. It also feeds me a bit. Like, I don't end up feeling depleted and burnt out because I'm always trying to extract something from someone else's classes or something someone else has taught me, which is, really the whole point of yoga medicine, is training our teachers to understand the what, why, and how, versus just giving them cookie cutter approaches so that they can be the leaders and really talk about those things, go off and, specialize in Parkinson's or, athletes or, whatever their specialty is, fertility, it's like, then they become the experts. Like, at our conference coming up.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. But yeah, you talked about videos. I actually loved how Instagram shifted a little bit toward video because photos are not my medium. Photos do not successfully capture my personality. And I always felt really restricted by trying to post a beautiful picture and then actually share some information or share my perspective on something. So videos for me are great because I get to have a little bit more personality and be a little bit sillier, and that suits me. But I think the thing is you've got to
It
find the
does.
thing that suits you. So maybe you
Yeah.
don't do photos, maybe you don't do videos, maybe you do the slide of text to share information. The key is you got to find something that, as you said, is sustainable for you, that you're not having to work up your courage for a week to take that picture or make that video and then hating every second of it. I mean, life's too short for that stuff. You've
Right.
got to find a way to
And
share that suits you.
and it's also not going to be, if you're really hating it and dreading it and it's feeling like so much work, it's going to be something really hard to maintain and keep up.
Yes.
Like you've got to find that thing that's easy to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because we're all busy. I know I struggle with making the videos. So, like Stacia, our team has found a way to kind of like pull snippets. We have so much, thousands of hours of
So
video
much
content
content.
now. Like, and so, it's getting creative. Do you have a lot of content that, you could work through and capture?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a lot more to it. Like, some clips do better than others based on how it was filmed and how it's cropped. And I mean, that's kind of beyond my expertise. But so
But
sometimes
you
it
can
is
ask for
having
help.
a team,
That's
right? Or
it, isn't it?
asking
Yeah.
someone who does it. Like, that's what I love about yoga medicine too. So many of our teachers chat and support each other because we're,
Mm-hmm.
we're all learning together, and social media is always changing. So
Yeah.
it is
And I
nice
think for
to
me, that's the main reason why I'm not bothering to chase the algorithm is firstly because I don't
it's going to
particularly care.
change.
Secondly, because I don't understand it. It's going to change. There's no point chasing a constantly moving target. So I might as well, set my compass on things that mean something to me and that I know mean
Yes.
something to the people who follow me and stick with that. And I can adjust course slightly, but I might as well have a true compass as opposed to chasing something that's moving every 3 days.
Well, and you want to support and please the people who
The
care about
people,
what you do,
not the
not the
algorithm.
algorithm. I mean, there's a place where the two can meet sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, just doing some more reels now or more videos now because clearly it
Mm-hmm.
likes that. But, you also have to find what your community likes
Yes.
and remember that it's not just about, and this has always been something that's been very, very important to me. And I've had a lot of people, teams supporting us with social media over the years and teachers helping us. And, it's always been really important to me to not base everything on followers and likes and comments
Mm-hmm.
because it's not going to create what we want. I want to create this thing
Mm-hmm.
that is us, that is our
Mm-hmm.
brand, that is meaningful, that has integrity, that supports our teachers, that inspires them and gives them information and does all the things we talked about in a sustainable way for me and our team and our teachers, that lifts our teachers up and supports
Mm-hmm.
them in a way that's meaningful to them. And, I think you can find all that, that's going to be different for everyone, but sometimes you need a team to help. Sometimes, I love on the yoga medicine page now, we work really hard to really spend a lot of our time and effort lifting up our teachers who have invested so much in their own career and education and are out there doing the work and seeing tons of students each week
Mm-hmm.
and drawing from that experience so that we can, all lift each other up, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of leads me into where I wanted to go next, which is setting aside the content that we put out. How do you decide who you follow and who you engage with and how you engage?
Mm. That's a hard one. I think that's a
Yeah, that
feeling,
one's a little bit less specific, isn't
like,
it?
and then sometimes something will pop up on your feed and you're like, I'm just not really feeling watching someone dance naked, or I don't know. Like some days I'll be like, that's great, right? That's so liberating
Go
and
you.
freeing. And others you're like, I don't really want to be focused on what my
Yeah.
body looks like. I want to,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So sometimes you just unfollow people because it's just a mood.
Yeah.
um, but for me, it's really, it's hard because I think you follow a lot of people, it's hard to like really
see anything,
unfollow and see anything.
Yeah.
I struggle with that, but you know, I found the new favorites button, so I use that a
Yes.
lot
Yeah,
to
I do
just
too.
try and surround myself so that when I do look in that feed, like I'm seeing the things that make me feel better in general,
Yeah.
you know, and don't make me feel inadequate or
Mhm.
like I need to keep striving and doing more, which
Mhm.
is subjective, right?
It is. I definitely do unfollow based on mood, but I have a sort of 3 to 4 strikes before you're out. So if I've had that feeling several times, then I'm unfollowing you. If it's a one-off, I can skim past. But if this has been a repeated thing, then yeah, life's too short. I don't hesitate to unfollow. And really, most of the people I follow are people I know or people who have expertise that I need to be exposed to. So, you know, some of them I really strongly agree with, and some of them are toward the edge of what I agree with and are there to kind of challenge my assumptions and my preconceptions. But that's how I tend to pick who I follow. And yeah, the unfollowing thing is cumulative. You have multiple chances, but if you're heading in a different direction to where I want to invest my effort, eventually I'll unfollow. And I don't
Right. And
engage
you
all
know,
that much.
our interests change and you know,
Mhm.
we're allowed to do that. We're humans. I
Of
don't think
course.
there's anything wrong with unfollowing people. I mean, I don't really pay attention or notice personally, so I think it's about building your community, people who inspire you and
Mhm.
lift you up or
Yeah. Or
educate
inform you.
you.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I like following some fashion pages. To me, it's a creative outlet, just looking at fashion and clothes, and then others, I'm just like, no, this is just feeding my consumerism.
Yeah. Yeah. I follow
Delete.
dog pages. I follow photographers, you know, nature photographers, wildlife photographers. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's not all yoga
a
stuff.
lot
And I
of
think
cat
that's important.
and dog pages
Because I did have a
and
time when I was almost
foxes.
all following yoga teachers and you know yoga influencers, and it became like a little echo chamber. So for me, it was really important to open it up a bit and follow some people in the political sphere and some medical experts and some people outside completely wildlife, animals, feel
Yeah, and
good
people who
things.
challenge your perspective, right? Like
Yeah,
you said, you
yeah,
know, sometimes it's nice to follow people you don't agree with to also see other points of view
hmm
and then sometimes I get annoyed by it and just
yeah.
unfollow.
Again, for me, it's a fine line because I'm not on social media really to be kind of worked up. So there's one thing to be
Yeah.
like, huh, I hadn't thought of it that way. I hadn't seen it from that perspective. But if I'm getting pissed off multiple times, I'll still unfollow because it's like,
I
it's
think
not what I'm there for.
it's interesting to look at people who have different opinions, but for me, it's challenging when they're so strongly opinionated.
Yes.
As someone who's been in healthcare for over 20 years and in yoga for
Yes.
almost 30, like the one thing I know hard and fast is no two people are the same and no
hmm
one approach or treatment or
hmm
technique or style is going to work for everyone, even with the same condition.
hmm
And like, so when people are so blatantly opinionated,
Yeah.
it's why even in yoga, like you have to do this pose
Yeah.
this way or this thing this way. To me,
It's a red flag.
you just kind of lose me. And
Yeah.
I also think because our social media has been so open-minded and embracing different ways of seeing things and um, you know, supportive of different approaches and styles. And it also as a positive side effect really, you know, steers you away from a lot of the negative feedback too, the polarizing statements that draw a
Mm.
lot of the negative feedback, which is really nice. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I agree.
luckily,
And I was going to ask you about negative experiences with social media. And it sounds from that like you don't have a huge number because you're not posting really polarizing things. You're not questioning people's, you know, bedrock foundational values in your posts. You're just asking questions or sharing information. But I'm sure you've still had some negative experiences on social media. I know I have.
I get very few.
hmm
I can't really even think of any. I've had some in the past. I mean, early on, I remember there was some when my book came out, Meditate Your Weight, which was really ironic because that book it was meant to be a book for people in the weight loss aisle to get something really meaningful and deep that was about looking at food as nourishment and looking at ways to feed yourself, not deprive yourself, and making peace with our bodies and loving them. And I just got bashed by a few yoga people, and I remember it
people
really
who
broke
hadn't
my
read
heart.
It, obviously.
And again, so I reached out and I was like, hey, this is actually what the book's about. Like, I would love to send you a free copy, and like, I'm happy to engage and talk about it. And I kind of had this response that I thought was really kind of nice and not emotional, and they just deleted it. And so, and for me, it was a really great practice because I had to make peace with letting go. It was, it becomes really obvious that if you engage with negativity, it creates more negativity, not just in the comments, but in your life. Like, you're the one that has to step away from that device and deal with whatever kind of emotions you've planted in your psyche later on. It has a presence in us. And so for me, it was a great practice to make peace with letting go, realizing I can't fix it. I could practice for my inner perfectionist to be like, it's okay. This person can have their audience. And they were all like highly charged around her. And I was like, you know what? I actually agree with all that you're saying. It's just, it's not what my book's about, but cool, I'm just going to step away.
Yeah. I think that's really important. You've got to manage your own resources. I mean, you could keep beating on that locked door. They're not going to let you in. They're not going to have a proper conversation with you, not when they're whipped up to that level of frenzy. Yeah,
I think replying just feeds the negativity.
Yeah. And I've only had one of those kinds of negative experiences, and it was ages ago, and it was just once a teacher who thought that some content that I was putting out was derivative. It was too close to what she was putting out. And it didn't even start with her. It started with her students kind of jumping on me and, you've stolen this idea and you're not giving credit to it. And I hadn't actually ever trained with the teacher. I didn't realize that what I was saying was similar. And hey, I've probably never had a completely original thought in my entire life. So everything I put out, I've learned from somebody, I've heard from somewhere. So it's entirely possible I had heard it from her at some point. But it was
let me just pause you there. I feel like for me, I don't ever assume that something I'm teaching is original. Not that I've, in quotes, stolen it from someone, which I don't believe is a thing. I think if you're taking it and using it in your own way, it's yours. I'm grateful for someone inspiring me.
Yeah.
But like, is there really anything new in this world? We're all doing, even though we think we're making it up, like we're probably all doing similar things. And that's so cool. Who owns it? That's silly. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was a really unexpected thing for me, but it was, in the space of seconds, I was just having people jumping on and jumping on and jumping on. And then she jumped in and just comment after comment after comment after comment. And I remember sitting here safely in my own house, probably thousands of kilometers away from any of the people who were commenting, feeling unsafe, feeling scared, and just having to, exactly as you said, not comment, not engage, shut down the app, put my phone away, walk away, because, I was literally feeling threatened, and I wasn't. I was completely fine. I was completely safe, and I just didn't engage. That's the only one of those experiences I've ever had.
So awful, right?
Yeah.
And the more you engage with it, because I've definitely engaged. It's been a long time since I've engaged with negative conversations, but when I first got on Facebook 15 years ago or so, I definitely learned a lot firsthand. And it's hard because as you engage with it, it can consume you. But I do think it's such an interesting, and I know you feel this way too, it's such an interesting part of our practice to realize, like, well, one, I don't own anything. Neither does anyone else. Like,
no point getting defensive.
And also, I don't need to get emotional about this, but isn't it interesting how worked up I can get from a few words?
Yes.
And wow.
Yeah, it was a fascinating,
I'm human.
Self-study moment of feeling the visceral response in my body and my heart rate and my sweaty palms and just going, wow, all of this from a few comments. Some people deal with this every day. Thank goodness I don't have to. And I haven't had to since. So it was an interesting learning experience. And it was, as you said, an opportunity for me to kind of examine my own responses and my own reactions. And then I get creepers, like everyone. I get creepers, and I just block.
I do
every
think
day.
when we're posting to inspire and uplift people, I do think when we're being open-minded, embracing different ways of seeing things, like it really, like I said before, negates a lot of that.
Yeah,
Because as
I
soon as we
agree.
start to be like, it has to be this way, really
You should
opinionated
never
and
stop doing
polarizing.
this. That's
Well,
dangerous.
here's the thing. The polarizing comments draw eyeballs. You
Mhm.
get more views, you get more
Mhm.
comments, you
But
get
be
more
careful what you
eyeballs, and
wish
then you get
for.
more likes. You get more likes, you get more views, you get more followers, but you get a
Mhm.
lot more shit.
Yeah.
And it becomes like a really strange community of people. And that's great
Mhm.
for, like for the people who are into that, like those kind of posts, great if it works for you and you like it.
And I do
But
think some
for
people
me, I don't.
thrive on that kind of back and
Yeah.
forth. They thrive
The
on the
drama.
excitement. Exactly. But I know
Yeah.
I don't. I find it
I don't.
intensely depleting. So no, I
Yes.
don't want to. And also, I guess the thing is I don't know the truth. So maybe what
Right.
I'm posting isn't the way. Maybe what they're posting is the way. So because I'm not sure, I'm never going to say this is the only thing. Everything else is wrong. Everything else is
Your
dangerous because
experience is wrong.
yeah,
Right? Like
I'm just
you who
never
had
gonna
this
be
positive
certain of that.
experience, that's wrong. But and that's, I think that's this humanness. We all recognize that there's a place for everything and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to see things. And even as we change, like what worked for me in my 20s doing yoga
Mhm.
is different than what works for me in my 40s or
Mhm.
50s or 60s doing
Yeah.
yoga or 30s. And I need to be open to the fact that each person I work with is in a different time in their life,
Mhm.
experience in their life.
Mhm.
Maybe things like hormones or jobs are
Yeah.
changing, or miscarriages or divorces,
Yeah.
or
All
I
the
always just
things.
assume when someone comes with some negativity that there's something else going on, and hopefully it was an outlet, like
Yeah. Hopefully
yeah, you
they
got to let
feel
it go.
better, they can take care of themselves. You've gotta do the things that make you feel better and allow you to set it aside and move on. Yeah, but
Yeah.
you're right. I think when we stay in that sort of compass of following the things that we're excited about and passionate about and sharing from our own perspective in that kind of open-minded way, you don't tend to attract a lot of negativity, thank goodness.
Yeah.
You just tend to get
And
people who are interested.
I think that kind of blends into this idea of like, how do we balance our time on social media, which is also really
Yes.
important, whether we're posting or responding to comments or looking at I mean, I love looking. I wish I could see all of our teachers are doing and posting, but
Mhm.
I do love poking around and seeing whatever happens to land in my feed that day, which can be, very different each day. But because I do feel like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but for me, social media is still work. I think
Mhm.
that's important as a yoga teacher. If you're using this as a way to connect with students and not just like a personal page, it is work. And so
Yeah.
I think there is a place for spending some time on there to connect with your community, to
Mhm.
respond, to support them,
Mhm.
and remember, even though you're not getting paid for it, though, people can monetize social media. There is an important contribution of creating this community. However, also managing your time. And for me, it's
Yeah.
also just noticing. For me, there's like a very fine line where I'll be on there and it feels good and helpful. And I feel like I'm helping people and looking at what other people are doing. And then there's a line I cross where I feel like I'm becoming kind of empty,
Yeah. I
like
agree.
depleted. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That I
Yeah.
think we all know
Doom
that
scrolling.
feeling where you start, because I think it can be a great way to socially connect, but then there's like this weird tipping point where you actually feel lonelier and less
Yes.
connected and
Yes.
more empty and more alone, rather than
Mhm.
feeling nurtured by some of these connections that we can have that are really nice, because we can't see everyone in person all the time.
Mhm.
So I'm just kind of listening for that subjective feeling,
Yeah. No,
trying to
totally. I
turn it off.
agree. I do spend a little bit of time on there every day scrolling through the first however many in the top of my
Right.
feed and liking stuff that I see that looks interesting, commenting on things or asking questions but I'm never there for long because I guess you can tell yourself, "Oh, I'll get to the bottom, I'll do all of today's." But that's not possible. That's never going to happen. So I just do the first few and then I'm out. One of the things that I did want
Right.
to ask you was, do you ever correct in inverted commas if you see somebody posting something that you think is is wrong, or sharing something of yours maybe in a way that isn't the way you intended it, do you ever kind of jump in and go, oh, hey, not what I meant, or not what I was trying to say?
I think it just depends on the circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like close enough and it feels like it's helpful for their community, because, I always just kind of assume that they're, you know, approaching it in a way that's relevant to their community.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just blatantly wrong and it's really bad, it's really rare, honestly. I feel like
I
this
agree.
almost never happens, but I probably just wouldn't repost it. And don't take offense if I didn't repost your story, because I don't repost all of them. It doesn't mean
she
it was
might not have
bad.
seen it. She might have been busy that day.
I might not have seen it, but I just hope that they'll keep coming back and learning more. And I don't expect everyone to see the things the same way I do. If it were like a quote that was going around a lot and it was misquoted, which has never happened, maybe.
Yeah, but the only reason I thought to ask that one was because I don't even remember what article it was. I wrote an article and it was shared by somebody who shared with their community, but the languaging was really different to how I had so carefully worded my language to not suggest that, maybe it was about chaturanga, to not say you're going to shred your rotator cuff, you're going to trash your shoulder. And they were sharing it, sort of saying, this is why it's really important to do it right, or you'll destroy your rotator cuff. And I was just sitting there going, I really want to jump in and go, the body's really resilient and adaptable. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid that you're going to do it wrong and trash your shoulder, all in inverted commas. But I'm glad you found the article helpful. And I just sat with that for a little while and tried to work out if there was a way I could say it that didn't sound like, no, you're wrong in what you've just said.
If I did my best. Like a post on social media, I would do just what you said and comment, just be like, and the shoulders are resilient, whatever, and just kind of add to it. If it were in a media outlet, I would absolutely go back to that media outlet and be like, no, you need to correct this, especially if it was bad, like shredding your shoulders. And and I've had that where media outlets have taken it. Like a lot of times they'll do those articles where they do an interview with you and then they go and they write it up. And sometimes they don't come back to you to edit. Usually they do. But if they don't, like I will definitely go back to them and be like, hey,
not what I said.
You need to fix this.
And
maybe once in a blue moon they can't or they won't, but usually they want to and they do. And it's fine. So and they enjoy, making it better. So it usually is fine.
Good. Fingers crossed.
I can think of a few quotes of mine though that I wasn't even sure if it was an exact quote. It wasn't a bad quote. It just didn't seem like a really strong point of mine that I was just kind of like, whatever.
Let it slide. Maybe it'll speak to somebody.
Like. There's one I think Yoga Journal did once. It was like, the more I practice, the stronger I get, or something like that. About, I don't even remember what it was now, but it had this picture of someone else who was in handstand with their feet on their head. Someone I actually knew, another teacher I knew at the time. And everyone was like, oh, I'm like, no, that's not me. Never
not me
could,
with my feet on my head.
And strength is important, but I don't
not in that context.
The whole of it. But
so we've kind of talked about the negatives, and I think we've talked about a lot of the positives already. You've been speaking a lot about the capacity to connect with people to some extent and to build a sense of community and to share information and expertise between you. And I think you hit on the thing that is the big challenge with social media, that we can't be with everybody in person. So to some extent, it does help us feed and fuel our connections to real people. But there is that tipping point where we stop connecting and we just start doom scrolling and it becomes sort of disconnected and voyeuristic. And how do you kind of find that fine line of actually talking to or connecting with real people versus just watching what they're doing and feeling somehow separate from or less than? Or it is a fine line, isn't it?
I think it's just finding what's important to you and focusing on that, and not letting yourself get like swept away in the scroll.
Yes.
Or in the negatives, which is kind of our brain is kind of built to really focus on those negatives. And I have to keep training it to come back to that. Yeah. I don't know if that
I do
answers your
think
question.
I do think curating your feed is pretty important. As you said, figuring
Yeah.
out which things are giving you that feeling of negativity and taking them out, which things are making you
Yeah.
scared or stressed or angry. And unless they're there for educational purposes to challenge your preconceptions, then take them out because life's too short. And as I said, most of my feed are people that I do know. So there is that feeling of some kind of human connection that I can remember.
Well, and I think, as far as like the positives, I think of social media too, I really do think of it as kind of a resume.
Mm.
Like I said, for me, social media is a community. It's not a personal thing for me. It's a work thing,
Hmm.
which is wonderful. I can create community in a really cool way. And I love that. But it is, I think, as a yoga teacher, for most yoga teachers, it is like having a resume so people can see who you are, what your specialties are, what you
Hmm.
do, why or when they should be coming to you because
Hmm.
I think it's really great to have specialties now in yoga. So if you specialize in female health, you can be talking to those things and you might do other things too. You don't have to do the one thing unless that's really all you want to do. But, people then know how to use you, right? The
Hmm.
more clear you can be in who you are and what you're good at, the more easy people can be to be like, oh, I know this person who's really good at that. Go check out her
Yes.
page.
Yes.
And that's the really meaningful connection. And so for me too, I'm building calendars. For me, it is more sustainable. I keep a note in my iPhone, just like whenever I think of something that's interesting, like I think the other day I was writing down something about perimenopause or like the wisdom in aging and how like we kind of have lost that a little bit. But, I just write these little notes down and thoughts. And then, at some point during the month, I sit down with my team and they come up with ideas as well. And we create a calendar for the month. And again, some of that's just inspirational, some of that's informative, some of it's more personal. And some of it's just asking questions. Like I think getting people to me in the yoga practice is the questions we ask to get people to
Hmm.
engage with themselves because it's an internal practice. It's not me just being like, you have to do this and this is how you have to do it because that's not going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
So for me, I have a calendar. We do it all at once. It's easier for me. For some people, they like to do it. And I do some spontaneous stuff through the month too, obviously with stories and things. But it feels more sustainable to do that. And
Hmm.
and if I have a day where I have to like write or be creative or create some classes, write a teacher training, like I'm not on social media in the morning.
Yes. Yeah.
Usually I'll do it in the afternoon because that's not my peak brain time for me.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm definitely managing how I'm engaging with it to some extent without being
Hmm.
too strict and rigid and remembering that it's a way to connect with people and to be like, this is who I am. This
Hmm.
is how I can be helpful. And remembering that, like so many people, whether it's people hiring you or students interested in your classes. I know, like I'm looking for classes in Denver and I'm looking at the studios and I'm clicking on the teachers and
Of
looking at their
course.
Instagram profiles to get
Of
an idea of
course.
what they're like,
Yeah.
whether it's a class I would jive with. I mean, I do like everything, but it's interesting sometimes if you're going to do a little research, you're definitely looking at that.
Yeah. No, I
So,
totally agree. And this idea was brought up to me first by a student years ago where she worked with me for yoga and she was looking for a Pilates teacher. And she said, who would you recommend? So I recommended a couple of people. She checked out their social media and said, no, who else have you got? And it was the first time I'd ever seen somebody look at a teacher's social media page as their resume. And it just struck me so powerfully like, of course, you're putting out these are the kind of issues that I'm interested in. These are the kind of problems that engage me. And this is what I'm working on. And this is what I'm thinking about. And this is the approach that I use. Am I humorous? Am I informative? Am I dogmatic? People are going to get a feel for that by looking at your social media. So that really changed the way that I approached mine to be much more like this is an online representation of who I am and what I care about and what approach
right.
I take. And I've got to think of that from the student's perspective.
It is so right on. I mean, you just nailed it on the head. And I feel like when I'm talking to teachers and mentoring teachers of ours, like it's something I'm always talking about too, because I really believe that your social media presence also draws people to you. And I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced it over the last few decades of leading trainings too. It's one of the things I love most about our teacher trainings is the coolest shit people that we draw, like people who are
Yeah.
humble and open-minded and
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of experience and information. Even the newer teachers, the
Mm-hmm.
teachers who've been teaching for decades, they're connecting, they're inspiring each other, they're
Mm-hmm.
leaders in their communities, they're like it's so cool to be surrounded with people. And for me, that's just what I love. Like other people like to draw other students to them. Like there's so many different trainings and modalities, but like I love that you can just be really clear about yourself and it does end up you end up drawing those people
Yeah.
to
You
you
draw
and
your
you
people.
create these really cool, supportive, nourishing communities, which I know,
Yes.
you love as well. So
I do. And I wanted to draw out some other things from what you said before too. You talked about the online resume. I think that's really important for people to wrap their heads around. And it's also a nice reminder of why not every post has to get a bunch of likes or views or comments. Remember, it's there
mm.
to round out your resume and to kind of present you as a fully formed person or teacher, depending on how you use your social
Yes.
media. So disconnect from the metrics and just think, what are the important messages? So that was one. The next one was having some kind of structure around it. I don't have a team. I don't have a calendar. Mine is definitely not to the level of structure of yours, but I do have notes in my phone where I know there are certain things going out on certain dates, whether it's my newsletter or a podcast episode or an article, and I'm building out the rest of my feed around that. So informal, but a similar concept. And the other thing that you said that I wanted to draw out was you're noting down ideas when they come to you, so that when you do need to write something for social media, you've got ideas already.
Yeah.
You've had things bubbling around in your mind that you've captured. You're not starting with a blank page.
Otherwise, I'd
And
be like,
yeah.
if I had to just sit down and think of things for the whole month, it would just
Mm-hmm.
be crickets.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So keep notes when the ideas come. For me, it's always when my brain is partially disengaged, like in the shower or out walking,
Yeah.
or that's when the
On a
ideas pop
hike.
up. Capture them, put them aside for when you need them. And then when you are doing that really focused work, I'm the same as you. I'm not looking at my phone until after I've done my filming or done my writing or, whatever is my major task for the day.
Or your personal practice. I think a lot of my
Mm-hmm.
inspiration too for the actual asana part of it is coming from my own personal practice. And for me, I get the most inspiration when I'm not thinking about
Mm-hmm.
how I'm going to use it in my other classes. I'm not like trying to write notes or, remember things, but when I'm
Mm-hmm.
really in my body. And so, I'm taking those notes afterwards too, wherever is accessible for you, but like that personal practice for me is really important and it has to
Yeah.
be kind of separate.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I think there's some really helpful things for people in there to kind of put a little bit of structure around their social media. And I think
Yeah.
also not to be guilty about spending time engaging with social media, as long as you are engaging, as long as you are viewing it as part of your work, connecting with like-minded people, gathering ideas, sharing ideas, asking questions, answering comments, and then get out before you start to internally disengage.
Yes. Yeah. And I like what you said about the metrics too. I mean, some of my favorite posts that I've made have been some of the lowest likes and comments and
Mm-hmm.
engagement. And I don't care. I'm happy because
Yeah.
it was really meaningful to me and it was really symbolic of who I am as a teacher. As
Mm-hmm.
you and sometimes I know like I assume that our followers are like me, that they're not necessarily the people that are just sitting on social media stalking. They're busy professionals that are
Yeah.
doing things. And it's not the most important thing for them to like it. If sometimes like they may have loved the post, but they're just paying attention to their own learning and their own day and
Mm.
trying to keep up with it all. And so it's not
It's
so
so
much for me
true.
about the engagement, right? I
You're
think our
absolutely
people
right.
are less,
When I do think about a post that I have really loved and engaged with, I might
right?
not even get all the way to the end before I'm like, that makes me think about da da da. And that makes me ask
Yes.
this. It sort of sends you off on your own tangent as opposed to, like,
Right.
like.
Exactly. And like for
Yes.
me, I might forget to even like or I rarely comment on posts unless it's like one of our teachers or something that I want
Mhm.
to engage with, but you know, a lot of times the things I love most, I don't necessarily take the time to like or comment because I'm really thinking about what it means to me and how I'm going to
Yeah.
apply it. And I'm making notes in my phone about how I want to remember it or use it later. And so, yeah, I mean, you can't take it personally. I think likes and comment, like, I've over the years of being on social media, I'm just trying to think of how, I don't even know how many years it's been now, but it's been a long time, a couple decades. And, I think I've just not, I don't care about that anymore. Obviously, we'll care a little bit because we're like, are people enjoying this? What do people want
Yeah.
from me?
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
to know, what do you want that I can give, not just like anything. Don't come to me for like Sanskrit or something.
No, I do agree with that. I think
there's other better people.
the role of the metrics is to help you figure out that Venn diagram of, here are the things that I'm excited about, interested in, passionate about, learning, sharing. Here are the things that the people who follow me seem to be. And you do want there to be kind of some overlap in the middle of, I'm sharing things that people find value in. I'm sharing things that people are interested in. And maybe they're not, but I'm passionate about, and sufficiently passionate that I'm going to leave it in there anyway. But you do want to be kind of thinking, is this just for me, or is this helpful to the people who I'm in community with?
Yeah. I mean, for instance, on Yoga Medicine, if all we cared about was numbers and metrics, our quotes by far almost always get the most likes. We would just post quotes all the time. How freaking boring would that be, and generic? I'm like,
It's so
anyone can
quick
do
and
that.
easy.
But I do like
But
having
yeah.
some inspirational quotes. I mean, it can be nice to have a little snippet sometimes on social media. I mean, sometimes I feel like in my page and Yoga Medicine, we tend to put like so much information in, and I feel like most people on social media are just like
Skimming
scrolling,
through.
right?
But you're
So,
looking
those
for the
tidbits are
people
good.
who are going to dive. You're looking for the nerds and the geeks in Yoga Medicine, aren't you? You're looking for the
Yeah.
people who are going to read it and go, well, where is the research link? I want to look at the paper. And the
Yeah.
people who do want to know the nitty gritty.
And the cool thing about Yoga Medicine is, like, my personal page, I'm like, hey, I'm not the Sanskrit scholar. There's other great people for that. But on the Yoga Medicine page, we can really share the diversity of information that our teachers have and backgrounds, which is really cool, that I don't have to
makes it more well-rounded.
Which is really what Yoga Medicine came from. Like, I have limitations. I can't know everything and do everything. I am limited. Like, we are all limited on how much we can learn and know and do. And so when we have a community like that, full of people who are specializing in any kind of therapeutic approach to yoga, really, which can be vigorous or restorative or a million other things, or philosophical, or so many parts that can be therapeutic. But it's cool that we can have this. I mean, I'm always overwhelmed just by our community's ability to show up in so many different ways. And it was such a relief to me too, to be like, I don't have to be everything to everyone. I mean, I think we all have those epiphanies where we're like, I can't be everything to everyone. I can only do Tiffany and what my limited tiny little information compared to the world. And so it's so cool to have people like you and Katya and all of our teachers who can really contribute and make me feel so supported and fulfilled. And yeah,
I love that.
It's cool.
And I think the thread that's been coming through the whole of this conversation is, in a way, social media is no different from all of the other things that we do as yoga teachers and as yoga students, in that intention is everything. So when we're posting, we're trying to be clear about what we're trying to say, who we're saying it to, why it's important, why it interests us. Same thing when we're commenting, what am I trying to add to the conversation? Is there a nuance that I want to add? Is there a question I want to ask? And the same thing in terms of who we engage with and which accounts we engage with. How is this making me feel? What is this adding to my life? Am I learning? Am I being stretched, or am I just being triggered and pissed off? And that, I think, makes it just another aspect of our practice in some ways. Like, we're trying to interact with the social media world the same way that we do the physical world, with a little bit more integrity and intention and mindfulness.
It's well said, right? I think.
Well, hopefully.
Well, there was one other thing that you mentioned that I thought that, was an interesting question to ask too,
Mm.
between us before this came on, is, is it possible to build a teaching business through social media, or is it
Or is
too
it
hard
just that
now?
online resume? Yeah. Well, this is my question for you, because obviously I don't know the answer these days.
Well, I think the answer is yes. Yes, it depends on your expectations. If you're
Mhm.
looking to build some huge, 100,000 person empire or million person empire or whatever it is, yeah, it's definitely harder, but I think based on everything we've said, it's not so much about how many followers you have anymore. It's about
Mhm.
having that meaningful connection, and I'm sure in some ways, I think you've got 12,000 or something like that now. Am I right?
13,500. Not that
13,000.
I'm counting, but
And I have 100 and something, but I'm sure there are many ways that you have more meaningful interactions with people because yours is a bit smaller and more
yeah,
intimate. There's something really substantial to that. And honestly, it's a lot of the marketing is moving toward, these micro influencers of, 5, 10,000, 20,000,
mm,
because they have more meaningful connections and, communication. So
for sure.
it's
And
not
even
all about the
within that
followers.
group, I definitely noticed that there are a smaller number of people who are engaging all the time, who are giving me
Right.
ideas or asking me questions or making intelligent comments, versus, a number of people who aren't engaging all that much. And I'm really speaking to the people who are engaged and interested and
And
sharing their perspective and adding their thoughts.
I think, and I've seen this with our teachers a lot, the ones who follow the trends and do the challenges and the things and all the stuff that they think they're supposed to be doing
Mm,
and maybe don't even love, but they build massive followings, but it doesn't usually translate to their business and what they're doing,
yeah.
So like you really have to keep in mind that the whole purpose here is to support a community of people that you can be helpful to, you
Yes.
know for most people, if it's just about having a massive following and being a yoga or Instagram celebrity, then great. That's cool if that's what you're into. But
But
if
be
you're really
clear about
into
your
doing it for
intention.
business
Hmm.
and, drawing students and helping the people that you can be most helpful for,
Hmm.
it's really sticking to that and not worrying about those likes. We've talked about that before, having those meaningful engagements and like each one is important. Um, and, metering your output, energy input through your own practice and
Yeah.
maintaining that integrity and intention with what's important to you.
And I do
And,
think, like
just
most
appreciate it
things,
for what it is.
yeah, it then becomes the long game,
Yes.
because you're not going to get 100,000 followers in a week following that approach of, I'm not saying
Yeah.
things that are controversial. I'm just sharing information that I think is important, or sharing my perspective on things that matter to me. You've just got to be patient to build a community slowly over time, to build it from people who are interested and are engaged and are likely to be bringing people in, hey, read this, this will be helpful for your back, or hey, watch this video, this might be great for your feet, whatever your thing is. That's going to take time. And all good things really take time. Building your business takes time. Even figuring out what your core values are as a business takes time, and it changes over time. So you got to be patient. You got to
Right.
play the long game and do the things that you're willing to be doing for a while.
And I'll say, like, for me, it's always been about the long game. And I'm
Hmm.
I'm so happy with that. Like, I don't care that I don't have half a million followers or whatever it is, like for me, I think the long game is, in my opinion, more meaningful. And I've been on it for, I was thinking, I think I've got on it in like 2008. I remember I was very reluctant. I was very anti Facebook, practicing at 4 a.m. I'd like three pair of Lululemon. I would wear them until they were shredded and like never took photos. And I was that person.
Hmm.
And, I remember Catherine Budig was actually the one that kind of pushed me to get on Facebook at the time. And I just remember posting, I was starting to travel more and teach more workshops and teacher trainings. And, as soon as I started posting about it, it just kind of caught on fire. It became this thing of its own. And it definitely was easier back then to get a lot more followers. You know, you'd post something and like instantly thousands of people would see it. And, you know, it's different now. But, you know, I think playing the long game gives you something that really nourishes you. And, you know, it requires you to stay really true to what you love, and also keep looking at what's changing and evolving, which is always the struggle. But yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful that I did it. Thank goodness for Catherine pushing me and
Thanks,
and then me
Catherine.
just like playing the long game and being happy with, you know, creating what's important to me. So
and I guess that's the big benefit of social media that we haven't even mentioned out loud, which is your ability to connect to people that you might never have the chance to come in contact with in real life, in person. Is you can find a community. You know, maybe you have a specialty that's relatively small. You're never going to get huge traction in your local area, but when you multiply that by all of the people on social media worldwide, suddenly you can start to build a community that's sufficient enough, that's big enough to fuel your business. Yeah.
And I mean, I remember too, like going and traveling and teaching was so much different pre-social media than post, you know, like people just saw things and then they'd be texting you and reaching out. And then, you know, it's changed a lot, obviously, which is cool. It's connected us all. And now we have access to almost anyone all the time.
I mean, maybe eventually we won't be traveling.
That's why I love this innovation conference. Is with all this online work, it's been a way for me to really hear more about what our teachers are doing. And it blows me away to see the research and the experience and the protocols, the things that people are using out there. Like it's incredible. So also our innovation conference, we've mentioned it a little bit throughout this episode, but if you are interested, there's so many great presentations, as I mentioned before, really on new research from our teachers, the experience from our therapeutic specialists, their experience and methods, new research that they've either done or looked at, stimulating new areas of discussion and inquiry, and sharing information of deep subject matter to our community. So you can check it out. You can attend the conference live or watch the recordings afterwards. So if you buy it, you have some time to watch those. But we've got all sorts of things, from research-based insights on tissue stiffness, which if you're interested in connective tissue health is a really hot topic. And then therapeutic insights on things like diabetes, vestibular rehabilitation, yoga for gut health, the microbiome and the gut and mental health, yoga therapeutics for gastrointestinal health, polyvagal informed perspectives, first responders, veterans, PTSD, anxiety, yoga philosophy as a mental conditioning framework for athletes. We've got also looking at helping students create sustainable habits, which I think is so important for yoga teachers, yoga for team building, neuroimmune interactions in yoga from one of our teachers who is a breast cancer specialist, breast cancer surgeon for decades. We've got a physical therapist talking about pain and some new insights on working with pain and in yoga care. Another PT talking on pelvic floor health, yoga for the neurodiverse, which I think will be really interesting. I'm looking forward to. Also, I mean, so many things, cancer, the power of rituals, having healthy energetic boundaries, yoga nidra, Parkinson's, and I mean, there's a whole bunch more that I didn't mention, but there's so many great topics from our highly trained yoga medicine teachers, our therapeutic specialists who are really deep subject matter experts, who are deep in the research in their fields and working with their fields. And so it's a great chance for us all to collaborate and learn from each other. I'll be hosting some of the sessions. Rachel will be hosting some of the sessions. So you'll see us there as well. And you can come and get inspiration. You can watch the recordings later, return back to them. It's such a great chance for us all to connect and be inspired. So check it out. It's very reasonably priced, so you guys can attend and enjoy. And I hope it's a helpful resource. It's really just meant to be our offering to the community to keep you guys informed and inspired. And I hope you enjoy it.
Can't wait. on our conversation on social media, where would you like to leave people? What takeaways would you leave people with?
I mean, I think it is what you make of it. I think it's always changing. And for me, my connection and relationship with social media has evolved many, many, many times over. So there's no end to evolving your relationship, whatever that means to you, how much you're engaging with it, how you're engaging with it, what tools you're using. But it's really about finding what's important to you. And, I always talk about this kind of triad of like knowing your strength, knowing what you uniquely have to offer. So like those might be similar, they might not, what you're really good at and what you uniquely have to offer or love offering. And then what the world needs from you. Like where's the gap of like what's not being done, what's not being offered, or what your students really need from you. If I can look at like what I have to offer, what my strengths are and what the world needs, then I start to find this community and I can build this really sustainable thing. And how that shows up is going to evolve. But, just finding a way that serves both you and the people that are important to you in a way that's meaningful to you. And I think, all the rest kind of falls in place and evolves over time. So
I couldn't agree more.
But it does take time. It does take time.
That's what I was going to add. Yeah. Have that clarity of purpose patience and intention, and then be patient. Do things that you're willing to do for a while, make it sustainable, and then it becomes less of a burden and it becomes just a healthier relationship. You're putting in, but you're also taking out, taking nourishment from, taking ideas from. Make it something that you can continue to do for a while. And
it does take work.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to do the work. There's no way around it. There's no like magical thing where you're just going to get some like massive following, some lottery ticket, like yes, those things can happen. But most of all, it does take dedication and work and commitment to that, knowing that that's what's important to you. If it really is what's important to you, and just being patient. So I hope it's helpful. You're not alone. We're all going through the same stuff in different ways, really, right?
For sure.
So finding your relationship to social media is an interesting thing. Let us know if you have other things you want us to talk about. I feel like we covered a lot this time, but there's always more, and it's an interesting conversation to have. And I think a really important one for all businesses. I mean, like social media is the new mainstay of marketing.
Media. Yeah.
It's
and in fact, we have a social media marketing episode penciled in to come up soon. So be keeping your ears open for that one.
It's the new marketing platform, so you can't really avoid it. But hopefully this is helpful. Let us know what you need, what you're curious about, what you would like to hear us talk more about. And we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Yoga Medicine. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you got something out of this episode, please spread the word and share it with a friend. You can find more information, articles, trainings, and classes at yogamedicine.com, or check us out on social media as Yoga Medicine. You can also email us at info@yogamedicine.com. Thank you for being a part of our Yoga Medicine community. We look forward to seeing you again. The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.